Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome for another live video AMA. And also, before we get started, I wish you all a great Halloween. Wherever you are in the world, it may already be the evening, you may already be celebrating Halloween right now, who knows. And if you're just getting ready for the day, well, enjoy the day. Today we're not doing much for Halloween, to be honest. I've just switched the usual background for a green screen just to create some kind of creepy vibe. I don't know if it's working or not. Certainly not, but that's fine. So right now we are live on many platforms, including LinkedIn, Twitter, what else? YouTube, of course, and Twitch. So whatever the platform you're using, we're going to have a chat today with Bianca, who is the CEO and founder of Wherings. But before she tells us more about her journey, her background, and everything to know about her startup, I'd like to invite you all to ask your questions anytime. I see we already have a bunch of people on the chat. Hi, Federico, and hi, everyone else. Please feel free to come say hi. Tell us who you are, where you're based, what you're up to, and ask your question for Bianca anytime. I'll try to pass them on as soon as they arrive, and well, if they make sense also. But feel free to join us. And if you have to go or for some reason you can't stay for the live stream, be sure to check out my YouTube channel because the video of today will be available on Monday afternoon, something like that. I usually post the video a couple of days after, and all my previous interviews are available there. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Bianca. Bianca, nice to have you here.
Thank you, Amandine. I'm super excited to be finally on one of your Ask Me Anythings. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on my side and maybe just a quick description of Wherings, just to get you guys thinking about all the wonderful questions that you can ask us later down
Perfect.
the line. So I am a Swiss South African. I actually grew up in Geneva. So Amandine and I just discovered we both speak French, which is great. And I essentially came to London to study here. I've been here for almost 10 years. I can't believe I'm actually saying that out loud. My background is in banking. So I spent the first 4 years of my career at Barclays and then at Goldman Sachs on the investment management front. And during this time, I was very involved in extracurricular activities revolving around reducing landfill and specifically looking at how our clothing footprint has a massive impact on global carbon emissions. And it's really something that as consumers, we can focus on and really diminish. And so in November of last year, I was super privileged to attend something called Unleash, which is a global hackathon for the SDGs. And we focus specifically on SDG 12, which was responsible consumption production. And that's where Wherings was born. And so I've spent the first couple months of the year just essentially doing, consumer validation surveys, focus groups, etc. And Wherings as we know it, which is a digital wardrobe and personal styling app, only for women, but it's going to be for men very soon, was really founded in June of this year. And now we're a team of 8 amazing wearers. And I can go into further depth in a sec, but I'll just stop here for now.
That's perfect. That's a great intro, and you touch base on different things I want to ask you about. So that's perfect. I think first thing first, you mentioned a bit your background, what you did before. So you worked in finance. And now fashion tech. So it's kind of a big gap, right? It's kind of two worlds that are not necessarily related, and especially between working in banking and just
Yeah.
starting your own business. It's a huge gap. How did you go between the two? Did you have some support, some help? How did you even know about entrepreneurship and that you could just get started right now building your own project?
Yeah, so it's been a tumultuous journey, I'd say the least. I mean, I had sort of worked on a multilingual desk. We had some very interesting high-profile clients, and I was lucky enough to sort of work on two fashion tech IPOs, so Farfetch and Stitch Fix. And so I guess part of my job had been doing a lot of research into the personal styling landscape for Stitch Fix, just understanding more broadly sort of trends within the industry, especially in e-commerce, the rental resale, where we thought that was going to go for the Farfetch IPO. And so, these things had been at the back of my mind, and I obviously had, some sort of background info. I'd done quite a lot of due diligence in the sector. But yeah, to your point, I had never really thought about transitioning from a very sort of stark corporate environment, to entrepreneurship. But I think, especially Goldman is a great training ground, especially for a sort of high stress environment. The culture there is wonderful in that, you can be as proactive as you want. You can really, they really create an environment of go-getters. And so I think that was really helpful for me to sort of say, well, there's no limit to what I can do. I can really, give this a shot. Um, and so I think that the journey to Waring was actually interesting because I was going to take a job at WeWork. And so I left Goldman for that, and then obviously things didn't pan out. But that was my big silver lining, because then I was really in a moment of, it's December 2019. I had just come back from Unleash. I wasn't going to get a job in November, December time anyway. And so I had this kind of headspace, this moment to sort of say, well, what qualities do I have? What capabilities do I have? What savings do I have to make this a reality? And what's my network? And I think that's the other thing that I really took from Goldman is we have a lot of connections. We have a lot of people in our network, on our LinkedIn, personal friends and family, that we can tap into. And I think that's where I sort of started to say, well, I can do this. Let me speak to these people. Let me leverage their expertise, or just, their consumer insights as a user. And yeah, so that's sort of how we got started, and then the rest just came. It was just a little bit of fumbling in the dark. The whole branding and sort of creation of Wherring was a wonderful moment in February of this year, where I worked with a friend from school, and so she was really invaluable in sort of creating this ethos, and this brand that I could really believe in, and feel as though I was the baby mama of. So that's kind of how it happened, and the rest, it was just a big snowball effect, and it just all sort of started, getting together, and the gears just started changing.
Sometimes it's good when an opportunity just doesn't work out. I know it can be
Indeed.
frustrating because you're fighting in all your head. Everything you do is just focusing on this opportunity and making it happen, and
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you think, oh, that's the end of the world. But actually, it can open some very interesting doors and put you in a different mindset where, okay, you
Yeah.
had a short setback, it's not what you were expecting, but maybe it's for the best.
No,
I
indeed.
really like the different aspect, and I want to get back to the sustainability aspect later on. But first, I'd like to better understand the company right now. So, when did you exactly started? How many people are in the team? Do you have any co-founders? Is it just you and a couple
Yeah.
of people? Tell me more about what it looks like.
Yeah, and I definitely couldn't have done this alone. So I'm very, very lucky that I have a wonderful co-founder, Hako, who's our CTO, and he has really kind of, been killing it in terms of being our sort of chief hacker, since the beginning. So we sort of got together in around March. We went through two accelerators together. So Impact Hub on the sustainability front, which was super, super important, in really helping us sort of lock in our mission statement, understanding, what road we're going to go down in terms of impact metrics, because that's, a core component of our brand and our mission. And then, Startup Bootcamp on the fashion tech commerce side, which was a real help. And I have to give it to those guys. I definitely don't think we'd be where we are without them. And so after that, around June time, just after the demo day for SBC, we started expanding the team. So we're now 8, but 6 of us are really full time. And so we've got a wonderful person working on the comms side. We've got 2 absolute hippies, hackers, whatever. They're like a mixture of both, that are doing our data analytics and sort of marketing. And then there's myself and our COO, who's also an ex-banker, who are doing more sort of the fundraising, partnership side at the moment.
Okay.
And I just want to mention that we wanted to get to market very quickly, just because we obviously have a lot of, amazing competitors out there who took sort of a longer time to get to market. And so from June to August, we basically, worked flat out to get our MVP into the market, and we launched that end of August. And so now we've had about 2 months just to test the MVP, grow our user base, really become a data-driven culture, understand these numbers. And so that's sort of where we are at the moment.
You mentioned that someone was working on partnership and fundraising. Have you raised any funding so far, or are you still bootstrapping right now?
So we've bootstrapped so far. We've got about 30K committed just from sort of an FFF round and a mentor who's fantastic. But that's sort of where we are at the moment. We really didn't want to fundraise pre-milestone. So we wanted to get to the MVP. We wanted to sort of have enough data that's encouraging, that we can understand and show improvement on, because, we feel that's really important to sort of get the right, deal together, the right valuation, et cetera, with investors.
Yes, I completely agree. I wish I could do the same. I think what I'm building is too complex for that, unfortunately. But I completely get that. Trying to bootstrap as far as you can until you have something you can
Yeah.
really prove your case and get the best deal possible. So, Bianca, I am very sorry for something. I have to be honest. I downloaded the app
Yes.
and I didn't really had the time to try it out properly. Meaning, I opened it several times, but well, maybe you can walk us through how it works, what it
Yeah,
does, really,
absolutely.
and so yeah, I can tell you where I stopped. I wanted to use it really, and just I got too busy. But so far, we haven't really been talking about how it works. So before spoiling
Yeah.
anything, I'll let you introduce us to how it works, what it does, and then yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a fair point. I mean, we're doing a lot of work on the customer journey. It's very important. So look, I think, the whole mission behind Wearing was to build a product for sort of recovering hypocrites like me. So a lot of us have, you know, so many pieces lying idle in our wardrobes that we just don't use, we can't see. There are about 500 million urban women like us in, the sort of 20 to sort of 35 age range that live in tiny apartments that can't see what they own, they can't interact with it. And so we thought, how can we democratize the personal styling landscape? How can we use technology, to bridge those barriers and to sort of create this experiential product where, millennials, Gen Zs can sort of interact with what they own in a sort of personalized, flawless experiential manner. And so, Wearing essentially is an app that allows you to digitize your wardrobe. So, take pictures of everything you own. You can do that in bulk uploads, and we crop and tag all your pictures automatically to sort of speed up that onboarding process, to make it less of an onus on the consumer, and to really leverage the tech that we have to be able to do that as quickly as possible. And so once you've taken the pictures of your items, you can then create unlimited outfits yourself, kind of like bringing back polyvore, which used to be a thing in our lives back in the days, and also get styled by Wearing. So we have like an outfit creator, and we've leveraged the most amazing Clueless idea that was sort of started 25 years ago, where Cher in the movie basically has this machine that she can like flip through, and it shows her the tops, the bottoms, and the shoes, and she can sort of create outfits like that. And so we've replicated this for our MVP as sort of the base USP value offering that we give. And then the last thing is, the whole point of Wearing is to really extend the life cycle of your clothes, get you to mix and match, wear things that you would have never thought of putting together. And so we're also building a whole ecosystem of caring partners. So, Amandine, do you know that, there's an eco-friendly dry cleaner in Marylebone? Do you know where to sort of take your shoes to get them repaired or give them a second life? And so we're trying to sort of leverage partnerships to do that and really provide like an end-to-end service for users, so that Wearing becomes your one-stop shop for all your fashion needs.
Yeah, that I love the idea, and so the step where I stop is taking the pictures. My flat has, well, I would say in my bedroom, the light is pretty poor, and so any pictures is very like grayish, dark,
Yeah.
yellow because of the yellow light, which is a big problem, by the way. I have to compensate with lots of white light. But yeah, and so does the quality of the picture influence or plays a big role? Like, do you rework the pictures before you can really mismatch them? Or or not. And so if your picture is crap, then you end up with a crap picture, and so you can't really you can't really see what it would look like together.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I mean, you're right. Look, we don't have an error tracking number that I can give you now, but that, that's really what we're focusing on in the next sort of month and a half, or let's say 2 months ahead of our next big launch, which is going to be end of Jan, and that's going to be for a fully fledged product. So, a lot of what we're doing now is supporting the user in that journey and giving you as many tips as possible to sort of take the pictures correctly. To a certain extent, and I've done this a lot personally, and so has a team, I think the tags and the cropping do work pretty well. So, you'd probably get 70% of your stuff looking fine, working fine, being tagged as, a black blouse. And so that kind of works. You kind of get to a level where as a user, you're like, okay, fine. I'm still okay, with using this, and it's still providing a hell of a lot of value. But then the second thing that we're rolling out at the moment is our signature white glove service. And so wearing assistants would come to your house, Amandine, and you'd say, look, the lighting is shit. You guys need to bring a lamp. My wardrobe looks like X, Y, Z. It's this big. I've got this many pieces, more or less. And we sort of take them all out, digitize them for you in the correct sort of lighting environment, and then put them back sort of color coordinated. And so you get a bit of a wardrobe revamp for this kind of like one-off fee. And so, yeah, that's what we're rolling out at the moment to sort of bridge that gap as the product sort of moves from MVP to sort of end product. And yeah, sorry, I would just add that in the January launch, you're going to have the possibility to sort of increase the brightness on, the cropped and tagged picture that you've taken. You can rotate it. You can sort of increase the size. So, we're really sort of also working on the tech aspect so that in-app you can also fix these mistakes if they're apparent.
You just mentioned one way of potentially monetizing the service, having this additional service. Do you also plan to monetize the app? Because I don't think at the moment you have any monetization plan, right? Well,
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
correct.
it's not monetizing yet.
Correct. So we wanted the MVP to be for free. We wanted to be able to get as many users on board to understand their behavior. We run weekly focus groups called Wednesday Wine. We have a whole sort of, feedback loop going on at the company now. We really wanted to focus in Q4 of this year on getting that feedback and really understanding whether we have some sort of product market fit, whether users are sort of engaging in the way that we had predicted, essentially. So that's why we wanted it to be free. We wanted to sort of see also how students would react. We wanted to sort of look at the Gen Z segmentation versus sort of the millennial woman, that I kind of am, getting some eye cream. But yeah, so that was our thinking. Later down the line, obviously for the launch in Jan, it's going to become a subscription model, and so we've sort of priced that quite conservatively so that it's not really competing with a Netflix. It's below that, but we still feel that we provide enough value, especially once we sort of get that machine learning or very basic hard-coded rule component in for January. So that plus the white glove service plus an affiliate sales kind of model is our revenue streams currently.
Okay, great. I think that's a good plan, and it's very interesting. I hear lots of startup having this approach saying, "Oh, we need to really grow our database and our user base before even thinking about pricing." But I think sometimes some startups tend to wait a bit too much. They kind of push back the question, and it becomes more of an excuse more than an excuse to continue pushing it back rather than tackling this right now. So it's good that you have a clear plan, and I think diversifying the way of incomes is also very interesting because there are lots of different additional things that you can do. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're so right, and I think there's so much that we can do that it's important to sort of stay focused, test the subscription model, get feedback on that specifically, do the rest on the side, but not go into sort of a data play or a marketplace. There's so much that we could do with Wherings, and I think we want to stay really focused at this stage.
So you mentioned two things, and I have questions about the two. I don't know which one to start with. let's
Go
say,
for it.
yes, okay. So you mentioned Clueless, and I think it's very cool that you're building something, like this sci-fi tech inspired by but what we see in the movies, and I love that because I think it really helps people understand.
Yeah.
When you talk about digitalizing your wardrobe, it can mean many things. But when you talk about Clueless, even if I didn't watch
It
the
makes
TV
sense.
show,
Yeah.
yeah, I know about it. So it's like it makes sense. You can visualize what it looks like. But what I really like is that it's not just about doing something cool, but sustainability and increasing the life cycle of your wardrobe is key for you. And I really like that, the fact that you're driven by this mission. Can you tell us a bit more about the problem of fast fashion today? I think lots of people may know about it, but what's the situation today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this was such a big part of that initial sort of research period for wearing. I mean, look, it all sort of started with me sort of looking at my own consumption habits and my own sort of psychological, behaviors and biases and responding to triggers that as a sort of educated person, I was thinking, this is ridiculous. I know that I'm doing this. It's BS, but why am I still doing it? And so, I sort of started reading books like, Break Up with Fast Fashion. There's so many incredible documentaries out there, like The True Cost. And I think, over time that sort of compounded in my mind. And, when you hear stuff in the news, like Rana Plaza back in 2012, like there's just so much that's been going on, both from an ecological perspective, like 35% of the ocean's microfibers come from fast fashion or, fashion production and disposal, or the fact that garment workers are severely underpaid, underserved.
Yes.
There's a whole sort of repercussion effect on the communities around the workers. It's not just workers' rights and paying up. And so all this sort of started to compound for me. And then I realized, as consumers, there are two parts of the value chain that we control. So that's the purchasing and the utilization. And so how could wearing as a product essentially ensure that your journey is as conscious as possible on both ends of the spectrum? So, how can we help you see everything that you own so that you can then create unlimited outfits? How can we sort of mathematically using tech sort of say, this blouse goes with actually 45 outfits in your wardrobe? You would never have thought that. You feel like you need to consume and buy, but you don't really. It's just about unleashing your wardrobe's full potential. And then on the consumption side, I was buying, I mean, and I'm so ashamed of saying this, but it's very much a culture in sort of urban cities. Like, I'd go out at lunch to sort of a fast fashion brand and buy something from Zara because, I was feeling a bit depressed or sad that day. And that's really sad, that I was like that as a consumer in our society. And so I started to think, well, how can I look at my wardrobe gaps? Why do I always buy stuff that doesn't go together? And it's not really helping me. It's actually creating more emotional baggage and taking away mind space that I could have. And so Wherings' perspective on that is helping you fill wardrobe gaps that we can identify. We're working a lot with style personas. We're working a lot with, what does a capsule wardrobe for someone like me who's maybe a classical girl look like? And so we want to just onboard, sustainable, ethical, maybe even just local, smaller brands, and sort of give those amazing sort of players a voice and a space within our consumption cycle rather than sort of gravitating towards fast fashion and sort of poor quality.
It's very interesting because this week I came across an article, and I think it was on LinkedIn, that was mentioning that Europe is drowning under second-hand clothes since the start of the pandemic. And so
Yep.
it's kind of two contradictory messages because in one hand, we all know that fast fashion is really bad for the environment, for the economy, for everything, and also for our mental health for sure. But
Yeah.
in the same time, we're told that second-hand may also be a struggle right now and a bottleneck. So, have you seen some changes since the lockdown, since the beginning of the pandemic in terms of people's habits? I know some people tend to buy things. I was invited on a podcast a couple of days ago, and the host asked me, "What did you buy during the pandemic that is the most crazy?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I haven't bought anything really, but I know lots of people
Wow.
tend to do that. Yeah, I know it's weird, but I think that's because I'm a founder and bootstrapping my startup.
Yeah. And that
uh,
changes things a
yeah,
lot.
it does, yes. But have you seen some changes from the consumer perspective and from your users?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's quite a dichotomy in terms of two different personas. So, we've seen a lot of, recovering hypocrite, kind of person, who's actually sort of said, you know what, this is my one and only chance. She's been ordering stuff every week. Her Amazon spend has gone up. She's been buying fast fashion just because she's in such a sort of, dark headspace at the moment, or just simply because she finally has time, she can try these things on, and she's thinking about her wardrobe. She's thinking about getting things on sale. There's a lot of that, and we've seen a huge spike in consumer spending, right? And McKinsey sort of said, well, it's expected to grow, very, very solidly for the next sort of 10 years in terms of e-commerce and sales projections. But then on the flip side, we've also seen, the likes of Depop, whose traffic has increased by 45% on the resale rental market side. And even people are still sort of renting pieces, especially sort of for COVID weddings, small get-togethers. There's this sort of onus on how can we be mindful, where we don't have the same lifestyle that we had before. And about, I think it's 30% of our focus group women have said, well, it doesn't really affect my lifestyle. Like, I still go out, I still sort of get ready, put my makeup on. And so, they're gravitating towards more sort of sustainable solutions for getting dressed and, maybe buying secondhand. A lot of them have said, I've actually finally had time to discover Vestiaire Collective, Depop, to buy pieces that otherwise I couldn't afford. And so I've spent that money, I've taken it away from fast fashion and into these more sort of ethical choices. And specifically with the Gen Z cohort, I mean, about 47% of them say our top consideration is really the environment, and in our purchasing behavior, we are prioritizing sustainable, local, ethical, smaller shops, rather than fast fashion. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think trend-wise, people are still obviously spending, but a lot of the segmentation that we're looking at are actually spending better, if that makes sense.
Hopefully, that will be something that will continue, whatever,
Yeah,
however the situation evolves, right?
yeah.
Um, has the potential lockdown or pandemic affected your plan at all? Your startup is still quite young, but so I can imagine you
Very.
weren't in the middle of a product launch or fundraising during the first lockdown, so you may not have to adapt your plan at the last minute. But did it have any effect on the way you're planning ahead your coming steps?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the team and I are all very sort of social people. We love interaction, and I think it was just very difficult for us when we were specifically sort of in the early phases of that community building. So sort of after June, when we launched our social, we started to sort of be outward facing. We wanted to build community. We wanted to have these focus groups that were super engaged. We had plans to come here to my house, do clothes swaps, pop up events, at the likes of, like Albright, and so many amazing sort of pop-up spaces like Lone Design Club. So we had so many great ideas in the pipeline. And then obviously that with the bootstrapping, the sort of delay, or not delay, but sort of increased difficulty on the funding side of things. It's been really difficult to sort of get to know your community, build a sort of safe space where you can sort of congregate and meet up and discuss things. And we had so many ideas around speakers, events that are sort of non-focused around wearing, but more around sort of the mission and the cause and how we were feeling right now. So answering your previous question in a group. But yeah, I think otherwise, it's been great for us because we've been, able to focus on the product side of things, and really sort of getting things ready for a potential launch next year.
And so, what's the next big step for you? What are you focusing on those days? You mentioned a bigger launch in January. So, is that your main focus at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I mean, look, it's sort of the typical, very early stage startup. As you said, the first 3 months of the summer were kind of, how do we even have a proof of concept? How do we get this MVP out? How do we get the most users on the app as possible? And I think now in the sort of tail end of Q4, we're really focusing on getting to know our user, getting to know her behaviors, understanding where she sees value in this product, what to focus on in terms of product features for the next launch, or the iteration after that. And I think, as an extension of that, it's really getting the company into sort of a, lean startup process where we iterate every 2 weeks. We're really data driven. We're understanding what the data is telling us. I think specifically on the marketing front, we're trying to, look at optimizing all of this. It's obviously still very new for me. I'm not a marketing expert, although it was my best subject at Imperial. So I'm needless to say, I've cracked out my old textbook. But it's sort of focusing on institutionalizing the company a little bit more, making it an actual body with cohesive sort of work streams, and really making sure that all that works whilst getting to know our user, and setting up sort of the PR machine, really sort of doing more work on social, which before we just didn't have the bandwidth to do.
I think maybe even when you have a background in the field you are tackling at the moment, so here marketing, it's never easy when it's your own project. You tend to be too close to the problem to really see the
Absolutely.
data. Like even if you want to be data driven and try to collect data and just try to understand it, you're kind of biased because it's your project, and so there are things that you know and you get that you can't understand, other people can't understand quickly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's always difficult, right? Even if
Yeah.
you're a marketer, to get that.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
we have a question from Federico.
Yes.
Federico asks, would you say that being a woman in 2020 has been a disadvantage at all in terms of launching your own startup?
Um, I mean, look, what a question to unpack. A great one. I think, definitely, especially sort of around the sort of whole Black Lives Matter, we did a lot of work on that this year at Wherings, to sort of see, what we could do, how we could sort of shape our own culture and our own company, and also lock in those values aside from the sort of environmental and sustainability values. So it definitely got us, thinking really, really hard. The team as it stands is 75% female. So, it's incredible. It's a very different makeup. Everyone has a lot to say. Everyone's incredibly vocal, incredibly in love with the product. So I think from a product side, we've had a lot of input that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think the team, because they're so in love with the problem specifically, have really, really, we've been able to leverage that emotional intelligence, that user, inner kind of user first and employee second. And I think that's been really groundbreaking in terms of the branding, the design, but also the feature list that we've got, coming up for next quarter and for the launch. I think personally as a founder, yes, there's a lot to tackle there, and there have been a lot of sort of difficult moments, whether that's typically with investors that are male investors of a certain age, with a certain level of privilege, that just don't understand the product or don't understand how incredibly large the market is for female, driven products like these. Like these are things. It's not a want. It's a need. Being able to interact with your wardrobe, see what you have. So I think on that front, it's been very difficult. The likes of I'll ask my wife and get back
Yeah.
to you. I think those things have been really tricky. Specifically when I have my sort of our COO pitch, and he's sort of a male, with an investment banking background, you can definitely see differences there. But I think, all in all, the pandemic's been really helpful for us in terms of me fighting the imposter syndrome, me really sort of getting out there and sort of saying, well, I need to build a personal brand. This is serious. This is really something. I've become a leader now. Do you know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
it's on a personal journey. So I think, being a woman has helped me a lot, especially for the kind of product that we're selling. But yeah, ups and downs, I'd say, definitely.
You mentioned something very interesting, having the importance of having a team that really loves their product. And I'm wondering, how do you find these people? Because if you create a job description and you put it out
Yeah.
there, well, you may not be finding the people who love your product. I mean, it's more difficult, right? To find someone who loves your product. You have to find people who have the right skill to join you, but then convincing or even just saying that people may have a personal interest and maybe the people who will love working on that is difficult just through job interviews. So did you have any like special ways of finding these people?
So it's actually quite a funny story, but it's all sort of organic. It's been absolutely organic for now, and I think as a word of advice to maybe other founders, when you're in those very early days, you're bootstrapping, everyone's broke, you've got your hustler, you're a hacker, and you're in the team or however you choose to name them. Once you've got those guys, and I think that's the hardest part, to find that CTO who's really got a generalist skill set that can create the app, that can think about the tech, the underlying tech, that can sort of help guide the machine learning conversations. Because I mean, for me, it was so difficult at the beginning. I mean, I
Yeah.
was so out of my comfort zone, and now I'm like a little bit, a little bit better. But once you've sort of got that tripod or those three people that really are the C-suite or that are driving the company, um, we then sort of took on a lot of help, a lot of sort of volunteer, like interns that were not based in the UK, but that wanted to help out just through friends and family. And I think, at the beginning, obviously, you're like, wow, people want to help. This is absolutely incredible. But my word of advice is really be selective with that, because at that point, you really need to balance your workload and you being able to train people. And sometimes, like, the relationship is actually not what you think it would be. Because I thought, okay, these people are going to be instrumental. They're young, they're ambitious, they're super hungry. They're going to take work from my plate. But actually, sometimes, if you're a conscientious person and you're entering this agreement where I'm going to help you, I'm going to develop you, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to train you, there's a lot of onus on a very young startup to do that, especially if you've only got three people in the C-suite. But what happened from there is we sort of started to see what we needed. And I think that was the most pivotal moment to sort of say, actually, what's most important now is not to hire some experienced person for marketing, in the digital space, in the sort of out of home marketing. Like, there's so much we could have done. But we sort of said, we need people to help us understand our data. We need a strategy intern, or a strategy analyst. We need someone to help us build out our brand in terms of communications, what we do on social, someone who has a visual eye. And so what really happened was, actually, just through some of my best friends, we started working with their younger sisters, or we started working with friends of friends, especially someone that I was in school with who helped us with our branding, our growth marketing. And that was so pivotal because we kept it in the family in a way. And as you said, we didn't have to do these job interviews. We didn't have to sort of, we had this like implied trust. And I'm so glad that it worked out. Obviously we had trial periods and stuff, but our wearers are really absolutely incredible. I mean, we have not only like a lot of bonding exercises and we're very close as a team, but they really have, they carry their own weight now. And I think that's the most incredible joy moment for me when I see my employees coming to me and saying, hey, I've looked at the customer journey. We have to redo all of this. And I'm like, wow. So yeah, it was all organic. That's what I wanted to say. But I mean, obviously in the future, it's going to be very different. So yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Well, everything is always changing, right? What you're
Yeah,
doing today, whether internally or for your audience, is not necessarily what you're going to be able to continue doing in 6 months because everything is always changing.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
you have to go through the stages. You can't directly jump into the perfect moment where you have everything established. So this first stage where you're establishing the foundation, um, you need to have what you need. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. You mentioned something about having your co-founder and the fact that you're not technical, but you are the founder with the idea. So I'm always wondering when I meet founders who have some idea for something that relies a lot on the technology, how did you go to validate this idea? How did you, because you had the idea, but then
Mm.
going from, oh, I have an idea to I'm actually going to do it, you have kind of to validate that it is feasible technically. And so, for what I understand, your CTO joined after you started to start. So,
Correct.
how did you go to do that, and what advice would you give to people in the same situation? Because I have met lots of founders in this situation.
Yeah, it's not. I think it's definitely not easy. You're absolutely right, and I think you have to be a specific type of person also to be able to let go, to understand that, there are technical barriers to certain things, and it's about knowing what you need to persevere on in terms of your product development. So I think for me at the beginning, obviously when we were back at Unleash, we created a whole demo. We had no idea. We won like the most disruptive tech award, and we were like, hang on, guys, we have no idea if we can actually do this. We don't know if the tech is there. And actually, if you look at a lot of the solutions that were around since like, for the last 7 years, especially in the US, they're just wardrobe organizers because the tech simply wasn't ready. It wasn't there yet. So I think, to validate the concept at the beginning, we did the most archaic thing we could do. And so we launched a proof of concept on Instagram. So Amandine, I would ask you to take 50 pictures or 25 pictures of your items. You'd upload them to Google Drive. My team and I would put them on Instagram on your grid, just so you could see them. And then we would have like highlights where we would style you. Basically, we'd put these outfits together. And so it was super archaic, but that really worked for us. And then we started to understand, okay, come on, we need to figure out what the back end looks like. And so we really went, almost like through a stage gate model, or just like building the building blocks. And our CTO was super good in that. He always reins me in. He's like, look, because the team and I have all these ideas. I mean, I can tell you what we're planning to do for 2022. It's groundbreaking. We have avatar, like there is so much you can do. But he is always like, look, first, let's nail this, and then we move on. And so I think for me, it was just reframing my thinking, sort of holding myself back and saying, let's build a product that is functional, even if it's shit. We're going to be embarrassed by it in Q1 of 2021 anyway. So we might as well just, do what we can to prove the concept, and also just, get data from the MVP. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey. And then I think on the understanding the tech piece, I think it's very difficult, especially when you come from a corporate background where, when I started at Goldman, I didn't know how to trade derivatives. I had to take a series of exams, the CISI exams. And so there was this sentiment of just learn it, right? Just pass your CFA, do whatever you need to do. You can just learn it. Like there's really nothing that's holding you back. But when you're in a startup and you have people to manage, obviously I'm a first time entrepreneur. So you're also figuring out your own stuff, taking the company forward. There really is no time for me to do a machine learning course.
Yeah.
At Stanford, so I think it's also just balancing that, and then slowly you actually do start to build an understanding as you work with amazing people like your CTO and your COO.
I couldn't agree more, and I have been through the same thing where well, because we're a deep tech startup, it's slightly different, but that's the same. Initially, I wanted also to take a course on machine learning because that's the foundation of everything we do, but then I just realized that I couldn't find a course that was going fast enough for me to absorb everything I needed. So I started going through a different path, and just you're busy. You have to really treat your agenda and your priorities and think about how you spend your time. And even if some people find this a bit pretentious sometimes to think about how you spend your time. But the thing is, it's a reality, right?
It's key.
Yeah, and it's not because it's valuable or well, it is, but it's not because it costs a lot. Your time costs a lot. It's because you have so many things you could be doing.
You have the opportunity cost, right?
Exactly. And so you have to just think, oh, this week my focus is that, but actually something comes up, and so you kind of lose track of your priorities, spending time on something you should have been spending time on, but sometimes you have to. So it's all about making small decisions about what you do that has big repercussion on months of work, especially when you're a small team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's also just that the landscape, sometimes from a cost perspective, a founder who's bootstrapping is limited by that. And I'm actually, we were having this discussion with Imperial the other day. I'm on the advisory board, and we were saying, well, how can we offer lifelong learning? How can we do this at a cost level that makes sense, or maybe it's free for alumni? Like, there's so much shifting in terms of how you can learn digitally nowadays that I think, at some point maybe we will get there. Maybe it will be feasible to juggle as you have a startup. But yeah, for now it's a difficult thing, as you said, to navigate and to prioritize, because you really don't know. I think that uncertainty at the beginning is really what I struggled with the most, not knowing where to prioritize your time, because all of this is very new and everything seems very urgent.
Yes, that's so true. You mentioned several times going going through some accelerators and being part of some program, now also with Imperial, so that's a lot of things. Do you really think that it has been a great support for you? I'm actually thinking about doing some kind of vlog, the next vlog or something on accelerators and programs, because I also have these questions a lot. Do you think that it has helped you and has been key for you?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I got interviewed about this, about digital accelerators specifically, because, if you're looking at the past where you take, they take equity and it was a whole program and you got to meet investors and they were warm intros, face to face, real handshakes, and how that's changed, specifically for us as we did that April to June of this year in full lockdown, not bonding with your co-founders physically. There are a lot of like all these sort of subliminal or like, things that you don't really think about, but that have a big influence on how much you get out of a program. I think, for us, and obviously this is very personal, for me, it was the absolute right decision to do. Like Startup Bootcamp was absolutely invaluable to us. I think it's more about accountability. It's more about having, a framework around you, having these people around you who have, to a certain degree, experience in XYZ, in marketing, on the consumer development experiments, whether it's creating a fake landing page, whatever, having people say to you, keep testing. Don't focus, don't fall in love with your product. For me, and they're obvious, we've all read the Lean Startup. We know these things, but when you're in the thick of it, you need to be able to pull back. You need to be able to have a sort of strategic day a month or day a week or whatever it is. But like the accelerator really helped us with that. Yeah. And then I also think, to just be a little bit less like humble, like, pitching, and even coming from banking, I mean, we're great at doing decks, but like, this is a whole new world, it's a whole new environment. And I think when you come from a corporate background or maybe non-corporate and you have absolutely no idea, I think having that entourage, those pitch days, those practice moments, it really gives you that confidence and on a personal scale really helps you overcome that imposter syndrome. And I know it's cliche, but especially women, we do struggle a little bit more with that, or just maybe just lacking the confidence to be like, this is the idea, we're at ideation stage, but it's great. Rather than, we're not really there yet, which I tended to do at the beginning. So I think it was very, very valuable from that perspective. And then just the network. Today, if I reach out to someone and they say, oh, you're backed by SBC, that's amazing. We know XYZ investor, or we've done XYZ with a digital marketer in the past, and she'll be an advisor, and I think for us, that was super, super useful.
Great. I love this kind of experience, because I think you started by saying it is very personal, and I think it's true. It's all about you and what you can get from this program. It's Correct. Not like you have to go through this or you have to have the stamp where you've been through this program, but it's more about what you're getting as an individual and not just for the company, but what you can learn and the support you can have and then bring back to the company and apply directly. And you also said Absolutely. That it's important to have someone, even if you know the foundation and what you should be doing or should be saying, having someone just being here and reminding it to you is important. It's a bit like when you have someone very close to you, your family, your mom or whatever, who says something, but it doesn't have the same impact because there's a bias, and they're like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if they say something and they look at you and they say, well, you don't really care if it's me who says that, but if it comes from someone who is completely neutral, who doesn't care about you and what you think, if it's going to hurt your feeling or not, who says something, you're like, oh shit, they're right.
They're right. No, absolutely. And I think the beauty of that is also that it takes the ego out of the equation. Someone says to you, look, what you're doing is not working. And you're like, oh, but it really, you're right. It really does help it, and it helps reframe all the knowledge that you have that's sort of bubbling under the surface into something that's a little bit more cohesive and applicable and just, a good takeaway kind of thing.
Completely agree. So we've been chatting for quite some time. I see we have a bunch of people on the stream. If anyone has any question, please, that's the perfect timing to put them on the chat right now because, well, we're going to start wrapping up soon. So make sure you don't waste the opportunity, or just ask your question 1 minute before the streams, and that would be that would be a
I
shame.
can talk very fast.
I can see that. That's great. I also see we get some cheers from Metamurai. Huge thanks for that. I love it.
Yay.
Thanks. I think you may be the first one to send some cheers our way. Last week we had someone sending some hertz or super hertz on Twitter and Periscope. So thanks a lot, Metamurai, for that. So you mentioned a few times some resources, some books, some things that have helped you. So for the programs you mentioned Startup Bootcamp, and I think
London
and
Partners this summer, which
yes.
was amazing. We've just recently been accepted into One Tech on the traction side, which is super exciting because that's going to really help us focus on, as I said, our user for the end of this year. And a
Um,
couple of others, Unleash Plus.
yeah.
We've been really, really lucky.
So that's a lot of things. I'll make sure I'll put them in the description of the video. But you also said that you've read lots of books. Is there any specific book or resource that you would like to add to the list? So I'll make sure to add it too.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance. I mean, I think, look, obviously the Lean Startup, there's so many great, books out there, specific books to sort of my industry, so the fast fashion stuff, which was super, super important to understand our user, their mind space, etc. But I think actually for me, I got less value out of the books, although I do love it and I do love reading, but more about people, more from people. And so I think actually, my biggest piece of advice is to sort of connect with other entrepreneurs who are on a journey that's very similar or very different. That really doesn't matter. But I've got a lot of great advice that way. Say, focus on doing this. Look at this. Why are you not thinking about this? Because to me, it seems very important right now. And I think for me, having these people that I could bounce ideas off was actually the most valuable. Rather than thinking about a marketing mix or doing the more sort of theoretical reading. But again, that's personal. And I think lastly, for me, the focus groups and speaking to users to continually doing so has been super, super helpful on both the product side, but also on the user side.
I couldn't agree more. And also on the connecting with founders, I've been talking to a bunch of programs. We've recently joined a new one, and I had a quick catch up with the people, and the first question when they asked me why I want to join the program, the first thing I mention always is the community, being able to catch up with
Yeah,
founders. And I find it a bit frustrating sometimes when you have programs where you have like workshops, but you can't really connect with people. There is no
so true.
Slack or Discord, and you can't just have one-to-one, and you're like, well, that's a thing that I want. And so every time that I can send feedbacks, I'm like, make more networking. Let me chat with other founders. Um,
Mm.
we have a question from Federico again, asking if you have
Yay.
a mentor, if you had a mentor during your startup journey so far, and if you're mentoring anyone.
Yes. So I'll answer the latter first. I mentor a couple of people, but I am open to do more. And part of the Black Lives Matter, that's what I was focusing on during that time over the summer. But I also do a lot with my alma mater at Imperial and also at SOAS. So super, super open. I think reverse mentoring is actually incredibly important, especially looking at the sort of Gen Z perspective, whether it's on my business or just in general, is super, super important. I think you can give value on both ends like that. And then in terms of mentors, we've been super, super lucky. And actually, I probably should have added this to what I said before. Apart from the programs, which are great, and you have, program like length mentors, which has been super, super helpful. As you said, like unbiased. It's almost having like a startup psychologist, like a shrink, someone you speak to on a weekly basis. And I think those guys have been super, super important. But they're really two people that have stuck with us since Startup Bootcamp, that have been working with us for the better part of almost the whole year, or basically since sort of March, April time. And that one of them is an ex-entrepreneur. He is absolutely amazing. So for him, it's really just having a person that has this incredibly well-rounded understanding, whether it's the market, the users, your product, just the sort of startup ecosystem as a whole. He's been so helpful. Things like, hey, he calls me and he says, hey, why have you not divided your user feedback into active versus passive? This is so obvious, but like these things that you hear this on a continual basis, and it really improves you as a founder and as a leader. And then someone also on the sort of growth, PR, communication side. And she's just been absolutely invaluable. I think she's a friend to me now, as well as a mentor. So we've really been super lucky, and we're actually recruiting more advisors at the moment in a sort of unofficial capacity, as a bit of a sort of like guardian program to keep us honest on the impact front, on the branding front, on the tech front. So I think there's so much value to get out of that, and people genuinely love sharing their knowledge and supporting others, and I've been so surprised by that.
I agree. I think there are lots of different ways of having mentors. It can be formal, it can be informal, but the most
Absolutely.
important is just to have some people you can talk to
Yeah.
freely, ask some question, whether it's specific or just talking more vaguely about what you do and what comes to mind for them. That's key. Um,
I
okay.
would also,
Oh,
I would just
go
also
ahead.
add one thing that I've recently sort of thought about and started thinking about is your mental health as a founder. And I think I've just basically through the NEF program that we're also part of, it's another one, sorry, you get like a mentor, and she's almost like a life coach. And having that sort of downtime, that space to reevaluate your objectives, how you feel, that is also super important. I think I didn't give it enough value at the beginning of my journey, and it's been hard.
Can you give some example of things that you've done that helps you improve your mental health as a founder? Anything, especially right now with the current situation, you can't just go to networking events all the time. So your agenda is
For
kind of
sure.
different from what being a founder looked like a couple of months ago. What has been really helpful to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like as I said, I loved networking. That was my thing. So it's been really hard to sort of do that virtually and assign the same kind of I have to go value to it, because when you've booked a ticket, you're gonna go, right? Whereas if it's catching up virtually with someone, you're like, I'm overworked, let me focus on my company, my product, my team. So I think for me, it's definitely been building the community, because I think when you do these focus groups, you speak to people, you speak to micro influencers, and for no monetary exchange, it's just chatting, it's networking, it's so invaluable, and it's also enjoyable. I've really found that the people who think that are like-minded in terms of wearing the mission, the product, really have given me a lot of value. And then I think it's obviously just putting special emphasis as a founder that you have to attend, conferences, networking, events, listen to other people speak, because there's so much value in that. And I've just been trying to do that. I'm really looking forward to the Beauty Stack conference tomorrow. So things like that, of founders that you are inspired by, women that are really changing the world, and also men, obviously. And I think lastly, for me, it's been really important to sort of diversify my feed, especially during, lockdown, during the summer, listening to people with very different opinions that I might initially be like, whoa, people with different backgrounds, completely different industries, and I think that's really helped me sort of stay sane and creative in a way, because there's so much sort of creative abrasion that can happen, or cross pollination from very different, areas. So I think, yeah, that's been me in a nutshell.
I love that. That's a lot of things, but that's perfect to wrap up. I have two questions to finish.
Okay, quick fire round.
Yes, well, it's
I'm
not really
ready.
fire, but first one, where can people find you if they want to find more information about you, what you're doing, your startup? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn. My email is there. So it's bianca@wherring.co.uk, or DM me on Instagram. I'm super, super open, and you can book a slot in Calendly with me on my Instagram bio.
Perfect. And well, second and last questions. What's your plans for Halloween?
Ah! So we were having this whole debate with the team, and we have a wearing bank holiday on Monday, or a Halloween hangover day. And I actually don't know, but it's going to be something pajama related, something, like working from home related. We'll see. probably like silk pajamas, some like fluffy slippers, and some outrageous sort of makeup.
I love that. That's so nice. I'm not doing
Comfort is
anything,
important,
so
guys.
I think it's a good inspiration. Maybe not for this Halloween, maybe for the next one. Who knows? But that's good. Well,
Check our Instagram for some Halloween inspo.
oh,
We
you're
did some
going.
really good throwbacks. Yeah.
Ooh,
Britney
okay.
in the 2000s.
I'm definitely going to check this out. And also, before we finish this chat, I want to say I had a look at your blog on your website, and I found it quite interesting. So, if anyone is interested in fashion, check out
Please
also
do.
the blog post. It's not just about the app, but you can find lots of very interesting stuff too on the blog. Well, thank you very much, Bianca. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the stream. I really had a good time, and I really love about your journey. I really love everything. And even if you just you knew as a founder, you just have been working on your company for a couple of months, and sometimes some people think that everyone has the same journey at the beginning. Well, we don't, and I find
We
it
don't.
super interesting to see everything you've been up to, the different programs you join, and yeah, your recommendation and advice are super interesting. So I'll make sure I put everything in the description of the video that will be out on Monday. Well,
Amandine, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you again for doing this with me.
thanks to you. And I definitely want to be in touch with you. Keep in touch. We definitely will be chatting soon. Well, thanks everyone for
For sure.
joining the stream. And I guess I'll see you in 2 weeks for another guest. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel for the video and my Twitter account for the announcement of future guests. I will be promoting also this chat today in the coming weeks. So maybe too much, maybe not enough. I don't know. Let me know also. And if you want to reach out, if you have any questions about the stream, want to talk about your own company, or maybe suggest a guest for an upcoming stream, you can find me on Twitter. Have all a fantastic weekend. I know the weather is a bit crappy today. It's very dark out there, but still enjoy the Halloween weekend, and we speak soon. Bye.